What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Technical Foul. You're here with Jack Anderson, and to my right, you have JP Pusilowski.
What's up, guys?
And to my left, you have Sanders Oakley.
What's up?
We are here on a Wednesday evening. It is about 10 o'clock, about to run through National Player of the Year conversation, some recent MSU sport updates, and then conference championship predictions. So let's get started.
All right, let's do some score updates. State has played a few times in various sports since we last talked on Monday. Women's basketball played today. They got a W over Missouri. They trailed 47-36 in the third quarter with about 4 minutes left before going on a 31-0 run to win the game by 20 and advance to play Ole Miss tomorrow at 2 p.m. Men's baseball played Southern Miss today in a rematch from the 3-0 shutout that they had against us earlier this winter. Belt to ass is how I would describe it. State won 18-3, hit 5 home runs, and run ruled them through 7 innings. And then men's basketball, we lost a heartbreaker last night to Texas. The Bulldogs lost in OT. It's one of those games where if we had just gotten the lead, I think we would have won it. Now you can say that maybe some calls down the stretch of the second half heavily affected that. I would have to agree with you. Shout out to Josh Pate. This is one of the things he likes to bring up a ton is we need the officials to have to do a conference as well post-game with the media. They need to answer for some of these things. Some of the things that happened last night were inexcusable. Some of those missed calls, RJ Melendez tripping over a referee because he's running down the middle of the sideline inbounds on a fast break. Some of those things are inexcusable. They deserve to answer for that. So shout out to Josh Pate for that. And we hope that that's something we could see in the near future. The Dogs are now 8-9 in conference play. They sit 9th in the SEC. The Bulldogs can now only finish as high as 7 and as low as 11. The path to the 7th seed requires some dominoes to fall into place. The Dogs would need the following to happen. State would have to win on Saturday at Arkansas. Kentucky will have to lose Saturday at Missouri. The school up north will have to lose twice, including tonight. They were down 5 last I checked to Tennessee. And they'll have to lose on Saturday at Florida. That, of course, is all dependent on if we win Saturday. If we lose Saturday, State will be a 10 seed. And then State will be an 11 seed if Vanderbilt wins at Georgia. In terms of the NCAA tournament, bracketology most recently had us a 7 seed. We probably fell to an 8 seed last night. In my eyes, the Dogs could finish as high as a 6 seed or a 10 seed. And that's it for your Mississippi State sports update. We'll pass it on to Jack for our National Player of the Year conversation.
Thanks, JP. Yeah, so it's shaping up to be pretty much a 2-horse race between Johni Broome from Auburn and Cooper Flagg, the freshman phenom that's at Duke. There's a lot of controversy as who would win it. I believe right now Cooper Flagg is favored. He's the odds-on favorite to win, especially looking at Johni Broome has put up back-to-back kind of mediocre games, especially for his standards. Put up only 9 points in a loss to my Texas A&M Aggies last night. Huge win for us. Couldn't be happier. Stopped a 4-game slide for us, so still kind of floating from that one. Did not see it coming at all. But, yeah, I personally would have to go with Cooper Flagg. If you look at their counting stats, they're very similar. Both average around 18 to 19 points. Cooper Flagg, about 8 rebounds a night. Johni Broome, 11. And then both around 3.5, 4 assists a night. I do think Cooper Flagg is a better defender, and the metrics back that up. Johni Broome has a 4.8 DBPM, and Cooper Flagg's on a 7.1. So essentially, Cooper Flagg is more impactful to Duke's defense when he's on the floor, and it heightens it more than Johni Broome does to Auburn's defense. In terms of usage rates, they're both essential to their team, both around 30% usage rate when they're on the court. So they really are both the engines for their team. There's no debate there. The biggest thing it comes down to is who they've been playing is a big point of discussion. Auburn and the SEC is definitely a tougher conference this year than the ACC. So some people like to point to that as why they think Johni Broome should win. That is fair, but you can't really fault Cooper Flagg for who he's playing. And, I mean, they're just steamrolling everyone. Not really close contest at all. Just blew out Wake Forest a couple of nights ago. So I just think it really is going to come down to, while Cooper Flagg's playing easier competition, he's looked more impressive in my eyes, more polished. I do think play style has to count for something, and he looks more impressive than Johni Broome does to me. So I'd have to give it to Cooper Flagg in that regard.
Yeah. So from my watching basketball, I would disagree just from like the competition level. So I do think that both players have been playing. They're clearly the best two players in the league this year, and there's no arguing that. But watching them, I just think Johni Broome, what he's done is comparable to Cooper Flagg on a pretty equal level, and he's doing it against better competition. So just some notes I have. Broome has played in a conference with 12 teams, expected to make the field of 68, versus Flagg, who's played in a conference with 3. Flagg certainly has a higher ceiling, and I think right now is playing better. But I think if we look at the season as a whole, and you kind of look back on especially some of Flagg's earlier play, and all 3 of Duke's losses, Flagg had a turnover with less than 60 seconds left in a one-possession game.
Not his fault. Wet floor. There's scandals going on there. Clemson definitely did not wipe the floor like they were supposed to. Conspiracy there, but I fully believe it. Not to cut you off.
No, you're good. So conspiracy or not, though, that's still 3 losses, and I'm not saying they're Cooper Flagg's fault because you can never blame it on any one specific play.
Auburn has 3 losses.
Yes, but I don't know that you could point to a direct moment in the last 60 seconds of those games where this best player in the country, it's just an odd. But like I said, in my notes later on, I go on to say that I think that now if you put Cooper Flagg in those same 3 games, 2 of them are wins. I think he has grown so much this season. I think right now he is the best player in the country, but Johni Broome entered this season as the best player in the country and has played at that level until recently. So he's regressed a little bit recently, but right now Auburn on yesterday, or when they played Kentucky, that was their 10th top 25 matchup. Cooper Flagg has played 3 top 25 matchups. His last one was December 4th, I believe. That was the last time Cooper Flagg played a top 25 team.
Yeah, they were all out of conference. Clemson and Louisville weren't ranked when they played them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll say Cooper Flagg does have the head-to-head win.
Correct. He does. Certainly does have a head-to-head win. Comparable stats in that game. And I don't know that you can chalk head-to-head win up on like who is the better player. It is a team sport. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. It's just like due to the competition and the pretty equal performance, I feel like that kind of gives Broome the edge.
Sure. I'm going to side with Jack here. I'm going to go with Cooper Flagg. And the reason is it simply comes down to aura.
Aura matters.
Would be the
You heard
way
it
I
here
describe
first.
it. Cooper Flagg came into the season as the highly sought-after freshman. He was already the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think you become the number 1 pick in the draft for no reason, and he's obviously played at a level that has earned that. Flagg is simply a tremendous ball handler, passer, scorer, pure scorer. He's great on defense as well. It's just one of those things where who would you pick? If you had to pick someone to put on your team right now, Cooper Flagg or Johni Broome, I think you're going with Cooper Flagg. Obviously, we saw the head-to-head. I don't think the head-to-head matters as much. If Auburn had won at Duke, then I think the head-to-head matters. Winning on the road in college basketball is definitely substantial. But I think Jack was talking about strength of schedule. Duke has the 64th ranked strength of schedule compared to Auburn is number 1 by far, according to KenPom. But Duke is just destroying teams, and Cooper Flagg is destroying teams. And we saw that there were games when Johni Broome was out and Auburn was without him, that Auburn was still good. State fans, you know this very well. Johni Broome got hurt. We went into the Plains, and we got hammered. That Auburn team is very, very good. I talked about them on Monday, and I'm going to talk about them again in a very positive manner. But Cooper Flagg is kind of the Duke team. He's the guy. Can either of you name another Duke basketball player?
Con Knuckle. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Come on, Malawak.
Okay, cool. I asked the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean,
you asked the guys who are doing a sports podcast, JP.
Yeah.
it would have been a rough look for us if you asked us that and we couldn't come up with anyone.
Fair.
But I completely agree that Cooper Flagg is more important and vital to his team's success than Johni Broome is. Auburn's a unit, a machine, and I mean Duke has a lot of other good players too. Isaiah Evans, Con Knipple, other talented freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they'd be where they are right now without Cooper Flagg.
I agree.
I disagree, but we'll end it with that. I can't really.
We'll see.
We'll see.
When is that announced? Is it post tournament or pre tournament?
They don't vote till after Elite Eight.
Okay.
So
it'll
my
be
guess is post tournament,
Yeah,
but I
that'd
could be
my
wrong.
guess as well.
That's interesting. So, do the voters, are they encouraged to take the tournament? And because Heisman voting, which is like Player of the Year, occurs before the postseason, so everyone's kind of on a level playing field as far as quantity of competition goes. Are they encouraged to take Heisman voting in? Do you think?
Like tournament?
I mean, yeah, tournament play into consideration.
I'd imagine if they don't vote till after the Elite Eight, but I couldn't tell you for sure either way.
Okay.
I don't know.
Next, we're going to roll into our conference championship predictions. We're just going to do the Big Four today. So SEC, Big 10, and Big 12, and ACC. We're going to give you who we think our favorite is to win. So, like, if I was going to tell you right now, like, I think this team's going to win the tournament. And then we'll give you a dark horse, a team that's a little further down the pecking order in the conference, as someone to keep an eye out on to make a run in their prospective conference championships. So we're going to start with the SEC. JP, do you want to kick us off with your favorite in the SEC?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to talk about Auburn. Auburn would already has locked up the 1 seed. Their most likely path is going to be Kentucky or us, State, Bama or A&M, and then Florida or Tennessee in the championship. Here's some reasons why Auburn's the favorite. Unprecedented domination, 15 victories over tournament teams. If they win out and they win the SEC tournament, they have the potential to have as high as 19 tournament teams that they have beaten. Another reason is they have a crowd that travels. Outside of Tennessee, there's no doubt the Tigers are going to have the most people in that building. We've seen in SEC tournaments that can play a factor. State last year when we beat Tennessee, because we took an early lead and we were able to keep that crowd out of that game, I think it fueled us a ton and didn't allow Tennessee to make a comeback on us. Another reason is that this is a team with a lot to prove once again. Auburn historically under Bruce Pearl has struggled in the SEC tournament. Prior to last year's tournament run, Auburn had not won a game in the SEC tournament since 2019.
Jeez.
They had lost in the first round in 2023, lost in the first round in 2022. In 2021, they had a self-imposed ban because of the Bruce Pearl recruiting scandal. In 2020, the tournament was canceled due to COVID. And so their last win was when they won the SEC tournament in 2019. I think that's why you saw this Auburn team schedule games like at Duke and at Houston. They wanted to prove that they were the best team in the country, and they have done that this year. So I don't think they're going to lay an egg in the SEC tournament like they have in the past. They have a lot of fire to play with. I think, if they can pull off that win against Bama, they're going to have a lot of confidence coming back into Nashville even after the loss at A&M yesterday. So my pick would be Auburn right now.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off that because my favorite is also Auburn for a lot of the same reasons. I really also just think they play really well together as a unit. They kind of all know their roles. They have shooters into Todd Pettiford, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones to go with, the inside presence of like a Chad Baker-Mazar who is shooting the ball really well of late too. I believe he's over 50% from three in his past 3 games. And then obviously Johni Broome, who we talked about previously. They just got dogs everywhere. It's really funny to think about the fact that they kind of all know their roles and are playing with good chemistry. When you look back at that Houston game and the whole incident of the fight on the plane and it got turned around, I don't know, it's just funny to think about where we are now in regards to that. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about Auburn a lot, so I don't want to keep going and going and going. But I mean, they're a wagon. They don't lose games. They're really tough to beat. So I think they'll go on a roll and get it done in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, Once again, I'm going to have to disagree with y'all. So my favorite for the
Crazy.
SEC tournament is Florida. Now, this is kind of a hot take. Obviously, Auburn is the best team in the country, but like I just talked about with the Player of the Year race, I do think Auburn, at least Johni Broome, as a microcosm of the Auburn team, is exhausted potentially. I mean, he scored single digits in their last 2 games. I didn't look at the box scores for the rest of the games, but they just lost to A&M, who A&M is good, but they're not as good. Auburn is better.
Careful now.
Auburn is better. And so I'm wondering if Auburn might be running out of gas due to all of those hard early out-of-conference challenges like Duke, that maybe they're just going to kind of run into a wall and they might need an early exit from the SEC tournament to kind of rest and reload to get ready for a deep tournament run. So, yeah, I've got Florida as my favorite. They're top 10 nationally in points per game, top 3 in rebounds, top 15 in offensive and defensive rating. Florida is a very good basketball team. Florida is a very good basketball team. 2 seed currently, at least as of now. So we're doing this podcast Wednesday afternoon. There's basketball happening now. There's probably basketball before y'all get to see this podcast released in a day or two. So as of now, Florida's sitting at a 2 seed, a pretty easy path. And I just don't know. They beat Auburn a week ago or so in Auburn. I just don't know if Auburn, I'd have no doubt that Auburn is the best basketball team in the country. I just wonder if they're the best right now, especially considering that my favorite just beat them.
I think I'm going to make that argument in about a week and a half for the NCAA tournament, but I think the fatigue argument is a very good argument for Auburn's sake. They have played in a lot. 15 victories over tournament teams. That's a lot of highly competitive games. I'm going to say it's going to happen a week and a half later and not next week.
That's fair. It is interesting, though. I agree fatigue, but Florida's also played a very similar schedule. Now they did just beat up, on Alabama tonight. Beat up maybe is a little strong, but they looked clearly like the better team to me tonight. So we'll just have to see. But as good as Auburn is, I think Florida's in that tier with them, to be honest, or maybe like a 1A, 1B type thing. But, they're just as good. It's unreal what they've done this year. So, Sanders, you want to give us your dark horse in the SEC next?
Yeah, so dark horse, it's a blue blood, so I don't know if you can call it a dark horse, but it's Kentucky.
It's a dark horse this year without Calipari.
Yeah, so they have had a rough slide. They've lost 3 of their last 6 games. They're sitting at 9-8 and 8th in the SEC. So it is kind of a weird to see Kentucky so low in the SEC, but I do think that they have a very high ceiling. I hope that as their players maybe if they can get some guys back healthy, they did just lose
Jackson Robinson's out for the year.
Robinson, yeah. They did just lose him for the year, which is tough. But they do have 3 other guys who've been dealing with injuries the past month or so, averaging between the 3 of them over 30 points a game. And so I think that if those guys can get back, get healthy, and if Kentucky can kind of reach that ceiling, they have a very good opportunity to make a deep run in the SEC tournament and be very dangerous.
They got a really good offense, especially talking about getting guys back healthy. If they can get Lamont Butler back healthy and playing well, he's kind of what drives their offense. He's the floor general, creates opportunities for other people, and can get his own too. So that'd be really big. I have Missouri for my dark horse. I believe JP does as well. Great offense, a lot of great shooters. We saw Caleb Girl come here and just light up the dogs. It was fun to watch as much as it hurt at the same time, but just good shooters up and down that team. They don't really win, they don't win. They don't lose at home. There we go. So this is going to be an interesting test as multiple games away from home, kind of back to back. But I think they could get it done potentially. So what do you got on that, JP?
Yeah, Missouri will come in as a 5 seed most likely. Their most likely path is going to be Vanderbilt, Bama, Florida, Auburn. Vanderbilt is a team they have beaten. They did not win at Vandy. Winning at Vandy is a very good win, by the way. Shout out State. Vanderbilt is 81st defense in KenPom, while Missouri is a top 10 offense. Bama, a 35th ranked defense in KenPom. And it's also a team that Missouri has beat at home. and then they would play Florida, who's an 8th-ranked defense, but this is a team they beat on the road. They won by 1 at Florida. And then my question was, what if we see the Auburn of old in the SEC tournament? What if Sanders' idea comes true? They fatigue out. Then they're going to play either A&M or Tennessee. In the Tennessee game, Tennessee had came into that game losing 3 of their last 5, and they needed to win desperately, and they were at home. Missouri only lost by 4. In the A&M game, there was a huge scheduling mismatch. Missouri was playing their 3rd game in 7 days, and they had been on the road for the last 2, and then were coming back to Missouri. A&M had gotten the midweek off and had just played at South Carolina. And then Wade Taylor makes a game winner with 1.8 seconds left.
That's my dog.
So Missouri loses by 3 to A&M. So that's 2 teams they very well could have beaten. And you could debate that they were in a pretty tough spot from a scheduling standpoint. So I think, with that offense, if they can hopefully light it up on the road at a neutral site, and maybe they get to avoid Auburn, there's definitely a chance that Missouri could go and win this in Nashville.
Bet. That's what we have for the SEC. I believe we should move on. Big 12 next. Sound good to y'all?
Sure.
All right, JP, you want to give us your Big 12 favorite?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start. I'm going to pick Houston, number 1. They'll be the number 1 seed in the Big 12. They've only lost 1 game in the Big 12. Their most likely path will be TCU, and then either BYU or Iowa State. More likely to be Iowa State. And then Texas Tech or Arizona. Houston is 3rd in KenPom. They are top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense, 9th and 3rd respectfully. From their path, TCU they beat by 19. BYU they beat by 31. When they played Iowa State was injury depleted, and they only beat by 6. And then Texas Tech was their only loss in conference play, but they quickly avenged it a week and a half later by winning on the road by 8. And then Arizona, they beat by 4 on the road. One thing I like about this Houston team is and I'm going to say this about a couple of teams that I really like to win the conference, and I'll probably pick them a lot in March for March Madness, is they have 4 guys averaging double figures. When you go through a tournament-like atmosphere, you're playing multiple games across multiple days. One day, your best guy probably won't have it, and so if you have multiple guys that can back him up, that's something that can be of a huge advantage to you, and that's something that this Houston team has. So they're going to be my pick to win the Big 12.
Yeah, I have Iowa State as my favorite. They've been hit by the injury bug a little bit this year, so they've definitely taken some losses. They're 22-8 currently, or scratch that 22-9 after the loss last night to BYU. It was a hard-fought one. They had the lead. Gave it up. BYU took a huge lead. They fought all the way back to force it to go to overtime and couldn't get it done in overtime. But they're top 10 in defensive rating. They're very hard to score on. And similar to what JP said about Houston, they have 5 players scoring in double figures, which I agree is huge for winning in tournaments and stuff because just so many games back to back. It's just you got to find points from somebody. I do wonder if them having all these injury issues has forced players to step up and kind of learn how to, play in larger roles and stuff. That'll help them in March, both in the conference tournament and in the big dance. So we'll just have to see. I am worried about gelling issues, and hopefully everyone is actually fully back and healthy. The BYU game last night didn't necessarily instill confidence in this pick for me, but, I still think they're a really good team and that they could make something happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about BYU in a few minutes. They were a dark horse pick, but we'll get to that. They're not a dark horse anymore, I guess. I'm with JP. I've got Houston. They have been dominant in the Big 12. I mean, they've got, like you said, 1 conference loss, but I also just really like how they play basketball. I think it's going to come and help them come tournament season. They play very slow basketball. I've got them as 300. Oh, yes. I've got them as running a pace of 360th.
That is very, very
For
slow.
context, there are 364 teams in NCAA Division I basketball.
Yep, exactly. And so that battle of attrition kind of grinds teams down. They only average 74.5 points a game, and yet they've still won 26 points. They turn the ball over under 9 times a game. And so if you kind of watch them play, you see that their goal is minimize opponents' opportunities to score and just hold the ball and take late shots and then hit them. I mean, they shoot 40% from 3. So if you're going to hold on to the ball for as long as they do and the opponents just never see, it's like when in football, just keep Tom Brady off the field. Like if the opponents never see the ball, you never turn it over and you don't miss. I mean, that's a very good recipe to win basketball games.
They do it very consistently as well. I've been very impressed what Houston's done since coming to the Big 12. Kelvin Sampson, their coach, has just done an amazing job there his whole time. But especially this kind of move into a bigger conference where you have big games every week instead of a couple big games in conference every year. I've been very impressed and I enjoy watching them play. So I have Iowa State, but Houston is very good and I'd not be surprised if they won it all. I'll go and kick us off with a dark horse for the Big 12. I have Kansas State. Undoubtedly a very disappointing year for Jerome Tang and his Wildcats. Spent a lot of money in the portal. Got Coleman Hawkins. Doug McDaniels came in from Michigan. They're ready to go. They've had some good tournament success the past couple years. There's a lot of excitement around that team, and it's just not come to fruition at all. Struggled in non-conference play, and the start of conference play looked like they were going to maybe put it together and make a run, and then that quickly fell apart. So we'll just have to see if they can, finally live up to their potential. The reason I like them to maybe make a run is they did have a stretch this season where they had a 6-game win streak, and 4 of those were ranked wins, including beating Iowa State and Arizona. So they have shown that they can beat good teams and do it in a stretch and play good basketball. We'll just have to see if they can find that again going into the tournament.
I'm going to go with Kansas. This is going to be a very funny argument, but I'm going to enjoy it. It won't be my funniest argument of the night, but Kansas is going to come in as the 6th seed. Their most likely path is going to play Utah, Arizona, Texas Tech, and Houston. If they lose to Arizona on Saturday, they won't have beaten any of those teams, including losing to Houston twice. So you would come to think that they most likely aren't going to make a deep run. But I'm going to say one word, March. And then I'm going to give credit to Bill Self. And this is a very experienced team. So maybe this is the time that they gel. Coming into the season, they were ranked number 1 in the country. They won a few games as number 1 in the country. And then from there, they have just continued to slide and slide. They have a ton of very talented players, but the problem has been similar to Kansas State is they just haven't put it together. So I'm just going to go out on a limb. It's a dark horse pick, so maybe now is the time that they gel.
Can't get mad at him if it doesn't happen, okay? It's his dark horse.
Yeah, I'm not putting any money on this or anything.
Yeah, so my dark horse pick was made a couple days ago. At the time, BYU was, I believe, the 5 seed in their conference, and they have since moved up. They're the 4 seed now. But it just didn't. It felt a little bit like a dark horse, and then they got a big win last night against Iowa State, and I think it was double overtime. It was a very long game, very close game.
Was their game double OT or was Nebraska-Ohio State double OT?
Maybe it was Nebraska-Ohio State. I don't remember which one it was.
Doesn't really matter. It was a close game.
Yeah. Anyway, so I picked BYU. I just think that when it comes to winning, you have to win games back to back, and right now, no one is winning games back to back better than BYU. They've won 7 straight games. Including in that 7-game period, they've beat the number 3 and number 5 teams in their conference. So they've already had some experience against the better teams in their conference. Have not beat Houston. Actually got destroyed by them earlier in the season. So I don't know if they can get over that hump. And I do think the interesting thing about picking dark horses and in a conference like the Big 12, where Houston seems the pretty clear favorite, it almost feels like anyone besides them is a dark horse.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I do think that BYU has a chance if they can keep hot and keep winning games that maybe they shouldn't, or keep winning games in overtime and create. I mean, that March is the time for madness, overtimes, buzzer beaters. And so maybe if they've got a little bit of magic in them right now, then just keep it going into conference play.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong here too, but I feel like BYU feels like a dark horse from a basketball brand standpoint. Just not necessarily the biggest basketball name. Now, the way they are using NIL, that may change. AJ DeBonce is coming in next year, absolute dog. Excited to watch him. But I think it's fair that they're a dark horse. They're on a heater right now, so they could definitely make a move. Let's move next into the Big Ten. Sanders, you want to kick us off this time with your favorite in the Big Ten?
I would love to. My favorite was Purdue. I think the Big Ten was the exact opposite of the Big 12 in that it looked like one of the closest conferences. There looked like about 5 or 6 teams
I agree.
that I think I could have picked pretty easily. The way I look at Purdue, though, is Purdue just feels so close to excellence. They have 3 losses by 5 points or less. They play that same slow pace I was talking about for Houston, 279th in the country. Conference tournament's a marathon, not a sprint. And then they have a player that leads the upper half of the Big Ten in points per game. And then, I just kind of feel like if they can kind of narrow or get rid of some of those close losses, they could really, turn in something special and capitalize on Trey Kaufman-Wren's scoring potential.
That's fair. Also, I mean, Braden Smith has shown he can lead teams to big wins before, even if it's not happened recently. He's a very, very good point guard. Probably will be first-team All-American, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and Purdue's a very good team outside of the NCAA tournament. They don't really, besides last year, of course, with Zach Edey, but they don't get upset really in the Big Ten tournament. It more so happens in the NCAA tournament. So I don't think that's a terrible pick. I'm going to go with Maryland. This is kind of a dark horse because right now they are the 5 seed and most likely will finish as the 5 seed. Their most likely path is going to be Nebraska or Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, and then Wisconsin or Michigan. In terms of that path, they have beaten the Huskers. They lost to Northwestern back in December. They'll get a chance, in January, they'll get a chance at redemption against Northwestern on Saturday. They lost to Purdue by 5 back in December, very, very long time ago, I would argue. I think these teams have changed. I think Maryland has grown a ton since then. They were unranked at the time. Since then, Maryland has climbed to 13th in the country, and Purdue has fallen from 8th to 18th. So that kind of backs up that argument there. We all saw the loss to Michigan State a week and a half ago, the crazy half-court buzzer beater as time expires because they shot the ball too early. I think we could say that maybe they're going to have a little bit of a determination and some looking for redemption after that loss, especially after the way that game ended. They've beaten Wisconsin, and I did have this as a question mark, but right before the podcast started, they just beat Michigan 71-65 in Ann Arbor.
And they are now up to the 3 seed in their conference, according to ESPN. So I don't know what's been happening in Big Ten basketball since we started this recording, but they're moving.
A lot's gone on. Yeah. Is that all you have there for?
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say is similar to how I said with Houston. They have 5 guys that average 12 or more points.
Wow.
And then another one I want to say, that's 12 or more, not double figures, 12 or more. Their 2 big men go for 16-9 and 13-10 a game. That's just extremely impressive. And in a conference tournament, I think you're going to rely a ton, especially on your big man. And that's if you can get production like that from your 2 bigs, that can help you go a long way.
Yeah. For my favorite, I have Wisconsin. Similar to what Sanders said, the Big Ten was very hard to choose. I just kind of feel like they've all been beating up on each other. There's just a top tier that with 5-ish teams, maybe 6, that could all easily win this thing if they just get hot and play good basketball. I went with Wisconsin because of John Tonje. It's just an absolute bucket. Tone setter for that team. I think he could lead them all the way in this conference tournament and just get things done. They just, even with outside of him, they have a very good offense, but he's a great player. I've been really enjoyed watching him play. So, anything else on the Big Ten boys? Oh, we got to do dark horses. My fault. I
I'm
apologize.
excited for my dark horse.
I'll kick us off with the dark horses,
got it,
okay? I know you're excited, but I'll make you sit
We'll
on
save
for a
the best
second.
for last then. We'll go
Yeah,
to Sanders last.
sounds good. I went with Rutgers, mainly because I wanted to talk about Rutgers, and mainly because it would be a dream if they made a run and we got to see Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper in March. I kind of feel like we're getting robbed that they are not going to play in the big dance. I don't know how Rutgers could not make it with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on their team. I personally would probably be looking at firing the coach. We'll see if that happens or not. But they'll go top 5 both in the NBA draft. Dylan Harper probably second. I know he's been injured, but still, it's just they've just not been able to put anything around them. So maybe someone like Tyson Acuff to step up and start knocking down shots, or they got to find something else to help, because even while Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper have been putting up numbers, they've just not been able to find the wins. So there's just wishful thinking for me that maybe they could find something and make it happen. It would be awesome.
I'm going to go with Illinois. We've talked about how good the Big Ten has been just in terms of like a strength in numbers thing. They're very similar to the SEC in that I believe, I want to, this is off the top of my head, this is not known, but I think all the way back to like their 10th ranked team in the conference have been ranked at some point this year. So they have very, very good teams. And one of those teams is Illinois. They will most likely be a 7 seed. Their path is either going to be it's going to either be Ohio State or Indiana, depending on who loses Saturday. And then they would play Michigan, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. Between Ohio State and Indiana, they've beaten both of those teams by a total of 34 points. Last Sunday, they beat Michigan by 20 in Ann Arbor. And then Wisconsin, they have lost to twice, 19-6, and Michigan State, they have lost to twice, 2-14. Illinois is a very, very good offense. They're top 15 in the country, 14th to be exact. And they've played in a ton of big games this year, so I don't think the Big Ten tournament is going to really stress them out or anything. They lost to Tennessee at the buzzer. They were manhandled by National Player of the Year Cooper Flagg and Duke. They won a neutral site game over Missouri. They beat Arkansas when they were ranked, and they were good on a neutral site. They played Bama on a neutral site. They lost by 13, but the Tide scored 100 in that game. So they kept up with them offensively with the Alabama Crimson Tide, one of the best offenses in the country. And then I'm going to say this again. This is another team that has 5 guys that scores in double figures. They actually have 7 guys that score 8 or more points per game. That's how good this team is offensively. So for a tournament where you need guys to score, different guys to score every night, this is a team that can deliver. So I'm going with Illinois as my dark horse. Sanders, this better be good.
I've got Indiana as my dark horse to win.
Okay.
It's the same argument as Purdue, and they're even closer than Purdue is, just with more losses. If you look back at their last 8 games, and this is starting most farthest away, working back to most recent, they lost to Purdue by 5, lost to Wisconsin by 8, lost to Michigan by 3, beat Michigan State by 4, lost to UCLA by 4, and then went on a 3-game win streak. They are on a 3-game win streak right now, beating Purdue by 15, Penn State by 5, and Washington by 16. So they're 4-4 in their last 8. But those 4 losses have been by 5 points, 8 points, 3 points, and 4 points against teams like Purdue and Michigan State and Michigan. And so I'm really just kind of betting on if they can find that same magic I was talking about Purdue, like they could put it together. They've already shown they can hang with these teams. Maybe they get on a neutral site. Maybe they just find that March Madness and they hit a buzzer beater and they win it. That's why it's a dark horse. There's not a lot to go on here. And I missed a game. They lost to Maryland by 1 to begin all this. So JP's favorite barely beat Indiana. Indiana is close, about as close as you can get without winning.
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten is very good from top to bottom. So,
Yeah, Indiana's no doubt very talented, and it would be very funny if they won the Big Ten tournament after announcing that their coach is stepping down after the end of the season. It would simply be funny. Moving on to the ACC, and I'm just going to ask off rip, does anyone not have Duke as their favorite?
I do not.
All right. Well, I was going to, try and, let us just all 3 talk about Duke at the same time, but, apparently we can't do that because Sanders had to be different. So
I think that's my problem is, like, I knew you were going to pick Duke. It's been 2-on-1 this whole night. I don't think we've...
we are double teaming you hard, but
yeah,
it's all good.
It's been rough. I'm about to hit up a corner 3 and win.
you're a
win
talented
buzzer.
player, man. We gotta shut you down.
Yeah.
We will start then and kick it off to you, and you can, reveal, how you had to be different. So I think it's pretty clear Duke's the best team in the conference. It would be a big letdown if they did not win the ACC tournament. I know they did lose to Clemson in the regular season, and I do also think that may help fire them up to not do it again. In the
Wet court scandal.
I agree. I mean, watch the video. They did not mop the floor, and Cooper Flagg slips right there. You You just have to have eyes to see it. But anyway, we've talked about him a ton. Top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. Cooper Flagg is easily the best player in the conference, the best player in the country, in my opinion. I'm really looking forward to seeing him lead this team to great things in March. What do you got, JP?
Yeah, Duke will be the 1 seed. They're going to play Georgia Tech or Virginia. Then they'll play either North Carolina, SMU, or Wake Forest. Then they'll play in the championship either Louisville or Clemson. I assume Sanders will pick one of those two. We'll see here in a moment. But this is how dominant they've been. We've talked about their strength of schedule was bad, but they've been dominating. They beat Tech by 26. They beat Virginia by 18. They beat Carolina by 17. And they're going to on Saturday in Chapel Hill. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. They beat SMU by 27. They beat Wake Forest by 7 on the road and then 33 at home. They beat Louisville by 11. And then their only loss of the season was at Clemson with the wet court scandal by 6. They're number 1 in KenPom. The difference between them and Auburn from like a point perspective in terms of like how KenPom ranks teams is the same difference between the 7th and 17th best team in KenPom. So there is a huge difference from a metric standpoint between this team and Auburn in KenPom's eyes. So I just don't see how it'd be similar to the Zion ACC tournament where it felt like, well, if this team doesn't win the ACC, like what's going on here because they've got so many talented freshmen. And I feel like the same is here with Cooper Flagg. So I just don't see how Duke doesn't win the ACC.
Yeah, talking about their dominance. I don't have it in front of me because I was doing it for just team previews for the March Madness tournament coming up. But I believe I have it down that their average scoring margin is they're beating teams by like 21, something insane like that. They're running teams out of the building. So, Sanders, let's see your unique pick.
Yeah, so, I mean, who better to beat the team that y'all are talking about than the team that's already beat them once?
Doesn't count.
I'm going to go with Clemson. I think that Clemson has what it takes to win this game. They have lost one time. They've lost once since mid-January, and that was by 3 to a sneaky good Georgia Tech team I'm going to talk about later. They're led by their senior, Chase Hunter, who averages over 16 points a game. They have beat the number 1 teams and number 4 through 8 teams in the ACC, and that keeps on going. I just didn't think it was important to talk about the numbers 9 through 15 teams. But Clemson has been very good in the ACC this year, and like I said, they just have not lost other than that one time to Georgia Tech in almost 3 months. And I maybe they're forgetting how to lose, and they know how to beat Duke, and not a lot of teams do. So I do think Clemson has a very good chance at beating Duke.
They definitely have the best chance out of anyone in the conference. I don't think that's much of a question. I'll go ahead and hop into my dark horse, unless you have anything you'd like to say about Clemson, JP.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Similar to my Rutgers dark horse, I just wanted an excuse to talk about the team I'm going to talk about because they kind of hold a dear place in my heart. I have Florida State as my dark horse. They're sitting at 16-15. Been a very uninspiring season. It's been a very uninspiring couple seasons for them, honestly. Leonard Hamilton, their head coach, very respected head coach in the sport. Love the guy. Has announced that he's stepping down at the end of the season because he feels like he can no longer lead this program in the way they need. I believe the NIL stuff just kind of killed him off, to be honest. But I loved watching their pre-COVID teams with guys like Fiondu Kabengele, Terrence Mann, Trent Forrest, Phil Kofer,
Dwayne Bacon,
Chris Kumaji. They were a lot of fun. Their battles with Duke were a great time. I think I've seen this one Fiondu Kabengele YouTube highlight reel probably 50 times in my life. Terrible rap song over it, but man, it's nostalgic. So I would love if they could just send Leonard Hamilton out in style. It's not going to happen, but, wishful thinking. Shout out to a legend, Leonard Hamilton. He'll be remembered for a long time.
It sounds like, Sanders, you have Georgia Tech as your dark horse.
That's correct. You want me to go ahead and talk about them?
I'll let you go first.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Georgia Tech, who, like I said, a very sneaky good team. They've won 6 of their last 8 games, including wins over number 11 Clemson, my favorite, and number 14 Louisville, the third best team in the ACC. Their 4 losses have all been on the road in their last their 4 losses, their 4 most recent losses have all been on the road. I do have concern about their ability to play on the road. Neutral site for the tournament. We'll have to see how they travel, but I do think they have a chance to make the run after already beating my favorite team in the ACC, Clemson, and then another very good team in Louisville.
Yeah, Georgia Tech, they're going to come in, I believe, as a 9 seed. Is that right?
I've got them as an 8
Okay,
on mine.
8 or 9.
But it's around there, and it depends on what time you looked at the rankings.
Yeah, given that they're still, if they're 8 or 9, they're going to have the same path. They're going to have to play Duke. They're going to have to play North Carolina or SMU or Wake, and then they'll have to play Louisville or Clemson. I'll go from the back to the front here. They've beaten Louisville and Clemson, as Sanders said. They will play Wake Forest on Saturday, so have the chance to beat them. Now, they lost to SMU by 22 at SMU, but they only lost by 3 to Carolina in Chapel Hill, which is very impressive for a team like Georgia Tech. And for Duke, March. I'm specifically going to mention one of the greatest March Madness runs we've ever seen, and that's NC State of last year. And I'm going to make the same case for Georgia Tech here, although I'm not picking Georgia Tech to go to the Final Four. NC State came into the tournament as a 10 seed. They would beat 15 seed Louisville by 9. They would beat Syracuse by 18. They beat Duke by 5. And then they would hit a last-second shot to force overtime versus 3 seed Virginia and win by 8 in overtime. They would then beat the number 1 seed North Carolina to make the tournament. They won 5 games in 5 days to make the tournament. And then, obviously, they would go on to beat 6 seed Texas Tech. They beat Jack Golke and 14 seed Oklahoma, Marquette, Duke in the Final Four, lose to Mr. Post-Up Zach Edey. Now, this Georgia Tech team has been depleted by injury. They lost 2 guys already for the season, before conference play. But when healthy, with their 5 guys that can at least play, they have 5 guys that score 12 or more points a game. Javian McCullum has been out since late February with a concussion. He was a game-time decision in their last game on Tuesday. He will be a game-time decision Saturday and is likely going to play in the ACC tournament. If he returns, it's huge for the Jackets, as their 7-man rotation is going to become 8, which is huge. If you're going to play 5 games in 5 days, you need some depth. And they're only going to need to win 4 games in 4 days. So my pick is Georgia Tech. I'm going to shout out my boys at Georgia Tech. Go Jackets. I think they can make a dark horse run if they can somehow beat Cooper Flagg.
That's fair. I think of their one team with Jose Alvarado a few years back. That was a really fun team. That's all I have. Do y'all have anything else you want to talk about or throw out there? Or?
No, I think that's it. We should be able to podcast again the Sunday or Monday after Selection Sunday. So a little over a week.
We got spring break next week, so that's why we won't be recording next week, sadly, because it's a crucial time. It kind of sucks to miss it, but that's why we went ahead and go.
I will be watching basketball for sure.
I will be in person at the ACC tournament, so
that's going to be
cheering
awesome.
on Chris Jans and the Dogs.
Absolutely.
Any hate watching going on? Any team you're like, I need this team to lose? Crash and burn.
The School up north.
They just beat Tennessee. I've been keeping up. They just beat Tennessee by 2.
Schubert.
Yeah,
that is brutal.
That is tough. I thought it was going to go to overtime. Tennessee had the ball with 7 seconds left, down 2, and I've been keeping up with the score over here to update y'all. So that's a tough loss or tough win for us. It's a very tough win for us.
Chris Beard's leaving anyway, so they'll be back in poverty next season.
Yeah, so we'll record Sunday or Monday. This show we're recording Wednesday night at almost 11 and should get posted sometime Thursday, Friday at the latest. So
probably Friday, but we'll see.
Everything we've talked about will be irrelevant by then, which is awesome.
No, it's still relevant. None of these tournaments will start till next week.
I'm just saying the seeding and the...
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Maybe.
They know that's going to vary a little bit. Not very many teams play Thursday, Friday, realistically.
This is true.
You may get a Big Ten game here and there, but, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you all next time.